they would come up and go, "Hey, Connor, how are you?" And I'm like, "Oh, fuck, who is this?" Because it's no fault of mine, it's no fault of theirs, but I don't want to have to say, "Hey, sorry, what's your name?" Hello and welcome to the Blindseyepodcast, the podcast discussing everything you did and didn't want to know about being blind. My name is Connor, and this week I thought we would talk about knowing people's voices. So, how do you know when somebody's talking to you? Do you know if somebody's talking to you? What's going on there? Examples I've had, different ways I've learned to get around with it, and just different experiences I've had, and a little bit of what's going on when sometimes you do, and sometimes you don't know who you're actually speaking to, even if you know them really, really well. So I thought it would be interesting to get into that. Also, before we start, don't forget to subscribe, like, share, whatever you can do on whatever device it is that you're listening on. That helps me out and helps the show out, so I'd appreciate that. Alright, so for me, when it comes to recognizing voices, there's a few things going on, especially if you're out and about, because there's a natural tendency for people to think if your vision isn't as good, then your hearing must be better and you must be Daredevil or a bat or something or other. But that's not really how it works. And if it does work, it doesn't really work all the time, and particularly in relation to encountering other people. So I'll often come into situations where I'm talking to somebody who I actually know, but for whatever reason, I just can't really tell who it is. It might be their voice, it might be the background noises, or whatever it might be. But I often get into situations, particularly down at the shops or on the streets or something, where somebody says hello to me and they're clearly saying hello to me as though they know who I am, but I'm not exactly quite sure who they are. It also comes with different kinds of voices, because some people have very distinct voices and some people don't. So that's not a diss at anybody who I guess has a non-distinct voice, but some people, it's very, very clear who they are when they're talking to you, and they're the only person you know that sounds like that. So it's a really easy connection to make. And other people more subtle, or a big difference in that, and I think this goes for everybody, is how often you see that person. So there's people that I might have known since I was a child, but I don't really see them all that often. So sometimes it takes a while for me to realize that it's them, because I just don't hear them often enough to have that fresh in the memory bank, where if it's somebody that I see all the time, it's not really as much of an issue. The other side of it is as well that when you're out and about, you usually would walk up to somebody and say, "Hey, hi Connor, hey." And that's not really a lot to go on, because all I have is maybe 2 words at most that I have to kind of be able to strip all the information out of straight away. And if you're not listening, you don't know if somebody's walking towards you, you just hear somebody say, "Hey Connor," and it's past it. It's gone by. It's past. And you're like, that person sounds like they know me personally. And all I've said is 2 words. So shit. Who are they? Because there's not really a lot to go on. You also get those inevitable questions, which are, "Hey, guess who it is?" And I always find them really hard to respond to, because I don't want to feel like an idiot by not knowing who somebody is. Even though for me, I know it's not a matter of mental capacity or being dumb or being stupid or something, I don't like how it makes me look, or how I sort of perceive it makes me look, by somebody saying, "Who is it?" and me not knowing who it is, because then I just sort of feel out of the loop. I feel like there's a barrier there. And I know it's not really meant like that, but it's just an awkward thing. And from the flip side, there's the other part of it where I don't want to look like an idiot, but I also don't want somebody who expects me to know who they are to think Connor doesn't know who I am, because I don't want them to take that personally, because it has nothing to do with how much I like them or respect them or how often I think about them. It's just, can I very easily, very quickly detect their voice with a couple of words in a busy shopping center with a lot of noise going on? And that's the trouble, because there's both sides of that, which makes me a little bit self-conscious. My mum is a typical example of this, even after all these years, where we might be out together and we're walking somewhere and somebody will come up and say, "Hey," and my mum will go, "Connor, do you know who this is?" And these people are a foot or two away from us and can hear my response. And I always have to say to her, do not ask me that, because for one, it makes me look like an idiot, or I feel like it makes me look like an idiot. And two, it's putting me on the spot to know who these people are. And if I say, no, I don't know who these people are, I don't particularly like how that looks. And I don't want them to think that I don't know who they are, or I don't care who they are, or whatever that might be. But it's just this weird on the spot, it's like a stage light has been thrown on you in the middle of a setting going, "Hey, what's your next move, pal?" And I always have to say this to my mum, even after 20 years, don't do that, because it's not comfortable. It's just not comfortable. And now my rule is with her, I'm like, say nothing and I'll just play along and see if I can either work out who it is as we're talking, or afterwards I'll say, "Who the hell was that?" Or what I'll do is I'll say to her, if we're approaching somebody, just whisper to me, "Such and such is coming up." So then I have a little bit of context. I'm a bit forewarned. I do know a lot of people who can't see or who have vision issues who would just ask somebody their name. But again, sometimes it's very obvious that the person who's spoken to you is very familiar with you. So you go, "Oh, this person has probably known me a long time and I can't really work out who they are." So I don't want to have to say, "Sorry, who is it? What's your name?" Because there's an unfamiliarity with my response contrasting with their response of knowing me. And it happens a lot maybe with people I know from primary school or from high school, where I haven't seen them in years, or I don't see them all that often, maybe except for bumping into them once or twice a year at a shopping center. But they would come up and go, "Hey, Connor, how are you?" And I'm like, "Oh, fuck, who is this?" Because it's no fault of mine, it's no fault of theirs, but I don't want to have to say, "Hey, sorry, what's your name? Who's this?" Because it doesn't match with their greeting, if that makes sense. A typical example of this actually is longtime friends and family friends, Chappos, whom I know, Nick and Scott, and some of them listen to this. And I don't think I've ever told you guys this, but I would probably really only bump into these guys a couple of times a year. Maybe if we're going to a gig or at the shops or something. But the brothers all have very similar tones in their voices. Now, they probably don't think they do, but to me, they do. So I'm kind of there going, "Shit, is this Scott or is this Nick?" And then I kind of go, "Well, I know Mike's in Perth, so it's either Scott or it's Nick." And then I go, "Oh, but shit, it could be Tim." So there's a thing there where I'm going, I have known these guys for 20 years and I don't want to come across as not realizing who they are as individuals, because I do know them as individuals and I care about them as individuals and I'm close with the family, and or at least I feel close with the family. But there's just that awkwardness of going, "Fuck, which one is it?" So it usually takes a couple of probing questions to go, "Oh, how are the kids?" And then some names drop out and you go, "Okay, this is who I'm talking to." Or you have a bit longer of a conversation and then you realize, no, this is definitely this person. So that's kind of the hard part, because it's somebody that you know, that you should know, but you just don't bump into enough to have that automatic down pat reaction to the voice. I would also say that a lot of this isn't even necessarily to do with people that you might only see intermittently. It's often happened to me where I'm with my best mates or I'm meeting really close friends or close family members, and just for whatever reason, maybe I wasn't paying attention or I didn't hear something right, or there was a bit of noise or whatever way they might have said something. There's a moment where I go, who's this? But it could be somebody who I speak to multiple times a week and I see every week. So you still do have your moments. It's not an exact science just because you're seeing somebody all the time, because even then you can still have its issues. And like a great example of this was, I remember sometimes if I ask somebody over for a couple of drinks, or if I'm having a party, maybe for my birthday or something similar, and I'll ask people over to the house and they'll come to the front door and they're like, hey man, and I'll be kind of going, fuck, who's this? Because I know it's one of the people I've asked over, otherwise they wouldn't be there. I don't ask randoms over who I don't know. But again, when it's somebody you don't see all the time, here you are inviting them into your house and you know that you know them, but you're not exactly sure who the person is, and it takes you a while. And again, I don't want to be that weirdo to go, sorry, who are you? While you're at my front door, even though I've invited you to my own house. So that's one of the strange examples that can kind of happen with this. I've also had the flip side where, just say I was meeting a group of friends at a bar or going to someone's house or something like that, and as everybody knows, you'd walk in, you say hello, everybody says hello back, whatever it might be. Someone says, hey, Connor, and you say, hey, and then you sit down, and after a while, I remember a couple of times, like somebody would nudge me and say, you're not talking to me? And I'd be mortified because I wouldn't have realized that somebody I was sitting down next to is somebody I know really, really well, who I would want to have a conversation with the moment I saw them. But because perhaps you walked into a room and everybody was saying hey at the same time, or all you heard was a hey, how are you, in a ocean of hey, how are yous, you don't realize that it's not just random people. There's actually somebody there who you would naturally gravitate to in a social setting. So it can be weird when somebody comes over and goes, hey, why aren't you saying hello? Because you could be sat 2 seats away from them and there's nobody else around them, but obviously I don't know that. And then you're like mortified for the fact that you didn't realize who was there, but I just didn't know. I mean, and that's, there's a bigger side to this, because a lot of this is, or part of this is all to do with sort of social inclusion. And you can be very often in a situation where you're surrounded by people, even friends, but you're still kind of isolated because you're not exactly sure what's going on and you don't really know how to read the cues or how to make a move. But I've promised myself that that's worthy of a larger episode with a bit more detail, but I'll just mention it here because that is also the side of it, that you're not really sure. Nobody wants to look like an idiot. Especially if you walk into a situation where you might be the only person with a disability and you're like, I really don't want to stick out like any more of a sore thumb than I already feel I do. But then you have situations like that where there's somebody there who you know really, really well and you don't realize it. And then they have to give you a nudge and say, what the hell? So look, that was the episode for this week. It was a shorter one than lately, but I thought it was worth chipping in there. And as I said, there's a bit more that sort of shoots off this topic that I intend on elaborating with further. As usual, you can get in touch with the show by emailing blindseyepodcast@gmail.com. That's BLINDSEYE podcast@gmail.com. I'm on Facebook and Instagram if you search for Blindseye Podcast. I'm on Twitter @BlindSeyePod. And if you just want a one-stop shop for everything, just go to blindseyepodcast.com. And I will be back to speak to you next week. Cheers.